Hello, this video is about debugging in Visual C++. The techniques shown here are very similar for other IDEs such as Xcode and code blocks. We'll be using the debugging if-then statements program that was provided for you, and you should have that loaded at this time. If not, pause the video, load the file, and then start the video again. The debugger is a program that works within the IDE that allows you to pause the execution of your program and then examine the state of different variables that are in your program. The debugger is a very useful tool used by many programmers every day. In order to start using the debugger, the first thing we have to be able to do is pause the program and tell the debugger we want to stop at a certain point. We do that using what's called a breakpoint. In Visual Studio, out here in the gutter area is where you would click to set a breakpoint. So I'm going to click there, and notice that now I have a breakpoint set on line 14. This is where the debugger is going to stop, and when it stops during execution I can look at the values of temperature, for example. Okay, we're going to set another breakpoint at line 10 because I want to see the value of temperature before I get the output. Okay, so now let's start debugging. We'll click on the play button, and you can see that my debugger took over, and it's paused right there on line 11 because that's the next statement that can be executed, and it's paused right at the cout statement. If I look at my console window, I don't see anything yet. That's because the cout statement hasn't outputted yet. Okay, so in order to go to the next statement, which is the cin, I would actually have to tell the debugger I want to go to that next statement. But before that, I want to see what the value of temperature is. So I can hover over the variable temperature, and it tells me the value is negative 9.25 and what looks like a bunch of garbage. Or I can look down here in the auto section because this shows me all of the local variables, and I can see that same value is here. Okay, so this lets me know that my variable has been uninitialized or has been initialized to some random number. Okay, so to go on to execute the program to the next breakpoint, what you do is you click on Continue. And now I get my prompt. I'll put in the number 80 and hit return. And I don't see an output message. Well, that's because I have another breakpoint set, and we can see that in this window our breakpoint has highlighted again. Temperature has changed to 80, but let's take a deeper look at this window. So let's click on the Visual Studio window, and we can see that again inside the source code this is where the breakpoint is stopped, right at the if statement. We can look at the current value of temperature. We can even hover over temperature and see its current value. And so now what I want to do is step through the if-else statement to make sure that it's actually going to output the same thing. So to do that, I use these controls up here. There's a control called step over, and if you click on step over, what will happen, it will execute the next statement and then pause at the statement after that. So our next statement is the if statement to check to see if the temperature is less than or equal to 32. Well, we expect that to be false. So let's click step over. It executed it, and then it stopped at line 16. It didn't do the cout, it jumped directly to line 16. That's because the temperature being less than or equal to 32 is false, so that goes to the else if. The same thing should happen here. We expect it to be false, but let's do a step over and see what happens. It's false. And if we keep doing this, these step overs, we'll go through the program stepping through it one step at a time. Finally, we find one that's true, and now we're sitting at the output statement for it's warm and comfortable. Well, we're not going to see that, so if we look up here, we're not going to see that yet because we haven't actually stepped to it. Okay, so let's click on step over again. Okay, when I click on step over again, then I can see that it says, oh, it's warm and comfortable. That executed the cout statement. And at this point, I think I'm done debugging. So if I click continue, then the program will keep executing to the next breakpoint or till it gets to the end of the program. And in this case, there is no breakpoint, so when I click continue, the program finishes and we're done. That is a basic introduction to the debugger in Visual Studio.